Hola, buenos días. Bienvenidos a este primer coloquio de sociocibernética crítica. En una modalidad híbrida, estamos en la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración de la UNAM, en la Ciudad Universitaria de Ciudad de México, y tenemos el gusto de tener con nosotros el día de hoy a la doctora Patricia Almaguer, presidenta de la Asociación del Comité de Investigación 51 en Sociocibernética de la Asociación Internacional de Sociología, y a nuestro muy admirado Bernard Scott, autor imprescindible para el estudio de la cibernética y la sociocibernética. Quisiera yo, además, decir que en la sesión presencial estamos varios integrantes del seminario de sociocibernética crítica aplicada al estudio de América del Norte que trabaja en el CISAN, pero también con una importante colaboración de comunidad de la Facultad de Contaduría y Administración. Entonces, pues, muchas gracias por conectarse y les cedo la palabra a la doctora Patricia Almaguer, presidenta de RC 51. Muchas gracias, Patricia, por estar aquí con nosotros.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias por la invitación. Te agradezco mucho, doctor Juan Carlos Barrón, esta invitación, organizar este seminario que me parece todo un acierto en el contexto de la investigación en las relaciones de América del Norte. Plantear pues rutas conceptuales que integren una perspectiva sistémica, una perspectiva de segundo orden que nos permita ver más allá de lo lineal y de lo inmediato, y que permita pues tener un análisis crítico de precisamente de otros niveles, ¿no?, de observación que tenemos que tener sobre pues los diferentes sistemas en los que estamos imbricados, ¿no? Los sistemas sociales, los sistemas de comunicación, las relaciones económicas, políticas y comerciales. Nosotros vamos a argumentar, por supuesto, que la sociocibernética es el mejor, de los mejores enfoques que podemos utilizar, pero no es de manera gratuita ni sin fundamentos, ¿no? Desde los 70s, la sociocibernética se ha ido consolidando como propuesta de análisis para pensar y repensar estos procesos, ¿no?, estos procesos sociales complejos en los que tenemos que poner nuestro enfoque de análisis. Y qué mejor que hacerlo de manera interdisciplinaria, y qué mejor que hacerlo de manera que pongamos al centro pues precisamente las relaciones sociales que emergen de estas nuevas interacciones. Comentar como presidenta del RC 51, pues que además de que es un gusto de que este seminario se promueva en mi país, también que esté con nosotros el doctor Bernard Scott, por múltiples razones. Primero, porque ha sido un actor clave en la promoción del RC 51, en la promoción de la sociocibernética como marco teórico. Segundo, porque creo que tiene un particular aprecio y cariño a México y a América Latina como espacio en el que se está desarrollando sociocibernética aplicada. De él hemos aprendido muchísimos, los que nos hemos acercado a este grupo de investigación, pues buscando pues, estrategias diferentes de análisis, y lo hemos encontrado. Y luego también creo que tenemos mucha suerte porque justo acaba de culminar una obra que yo creo que va a ser fundamental para las nuevas generaciones de sociocibernéticos, y es su nueva obra, su nuevo libro, en el que sintetiza de una manera como muy como asequible, ¿no? O sea, que podemos entenderlo, pues su propuesta de sociocibernética y complejidad, ¿no? Hace una revisión de toda digamos, los aportes desde la sociocibernética y la perspectiva desde la complejidad. Es un nuevo libro que acaba de generar con la editorial Brill, y en inglés se llama Sociocybernetics and Complexity. Y bueno, pues esta es una obra que recién pues como que sintetiza todo lo que se está generando, todo lo nuevo, todo lo que hay. Desde ahí, por supuesto, que el doctor Scott nos puede ofrecer pues elementos, ¿no?, conceptuales para apuntalar esto que están proponiendo, ¿no?, desde el CISAN, como las fundaciones de una cibernética crítica o una sociocibernética crítica. Entonces creo que eso pues será importante escucharle, es importante estudiar sus propuestas y luego lo ideal ponerlo en práctica en investigación aplicada. Comentar, bueno, pues que la trayectoria del doctor Bernard Scott es muy amplia y muy heterogénea, transitando desde el ámbito de la educación, de la psicología social, desde el estudio de la conversación, posteriormente el ámbito de la cibernética y sociocibernética, y que, bueno, pues fue un académico durante mucho tiempo de la Universidad Cranfield en Reino Unido. También fue académico en el International Academy of Systems and Cybernetic Science. Y bueno, ha sido también presidente del RS51, que es Research Committee, que es como comité de investigación, el número 51 de la Asociación Internacional de Sociología, que está dedicada en exclusiva a la investigación, promoción y difusión de este marco conceptual de la sociocibernética. Entonces, bueno, me da muchísimo gusto que veo ahí un grupo amplio, ¿no?, en este seminario que se está promoviendo desde el CISAN, que también sé que se promueve en otras geografías de México y que creo que a partir de las estrategias del uso crítico de nuevas tecnologías, pues también podrá generar ecos, ¿no?, y sinergias pues en otros espacios geográficos donde se ve útil. Sin más, bueno, le daré la bienvenida también a Bernard. Bernard, welcome. We are very happy. I was telling to our colleagues that I was very happy that you were directing this conference, this paper to my Mexican fellows, and that I think you have a particular attention and care for the Latin American group, which is in the RC51, and also you have been many times in our country and in other Latin American countries, as Colombia in our previous conference. So I think your reflections will be helpful for strength the analytical approach that we need to develop, to understand, and to participate, no, to transform. I was looking the word to transform in the social reality of Latin American countries. So I think we need it. It's not that because it is an interesting theoretical or conceptual or intellectual debate, but I just think we need to apply more robust analytical frameworks to transform reality. So thank you very much for being here. Gracias a los colegas del CISAN de la UNAM por organizarlo. Y sin más, pues Juancho, te doy el agradecimiento y te cedo la palabra para que transcurra el seminario, pues como lo tenéis organizado.
Muchas gracias Patricia. Y bueno, pues thank you very much, Bernard, for being here, connecting with us in this day. This is having an echo. It's okay. Sorry for the echo.
It's fine. I think it's okay.
Okay, we can manage.
Okay. Okay. So just thank you very much, Bernard. We read your book at the seminar. We had some sessions to discuss it, and we really enjoy it. We are very grateful that you clarify so many points for us, and we are very happy that you accept this invitation to share your thoughts on this important issue. And we are here, 10 people from the seminar of critical sociocybernetics from UNAM, and some others will be connected by YouTube in CSAN. For the people that is listening this and wants to be part of the colloquium, please send an email so I can put you into the Zoom session if you want. And well, Bernard, the voice is yours. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Hope we can meet very soon and share live and with the conversations that we used to have, to return to them.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And well, the word is yours. Your presentation, welcome. Thank you, Bernard, for being here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Carlos, for inviting me. Thank you. May I call you Juancho? Juan Carlos, may I call you Juancho? Okay.
Yes, you can, Bernard.
Thank you. And Patricia, may I call you the beautiful one?
Okay, that's fine.
No.
You're just streaming that, but it's okay.
You become younger, dear, in my eyes. Thank you both for that introduction. I will say buenos dias to everyone in this colloquium. That is almost the limit of my Spanish, but I do believe if I was to begin my life again, I would spend more time trying to learn Spanish. I've tried in the last 20 years, but not much sticks. I'm too old. But I think it's so important that the different parts of the world speak to each other and try to understand each other and their problems. I just begin with an anecdote. It's in the book. Many years ago, when I was a student living in London, and I was from a working class family. My father was a driver of lorries, of camion in French. And I met a young woman from Colombia, and I was saying that I was in England. I was from lower class family, a working class family, a lower class. And she said, Bernard, compared to your country, everyone in my country is at the bottom. So I had an early wake up, if you like, personal contact with someone who's telling me that the world is not just as it is in the UK or in England. But okay, I'll now begin. This is my title. It's a bit pretentious, but I think cybernetics is significant enough to require some serious attention. So what is cybernetics? If you have been reading my book, then you'll know the views I take, but I'm just summarizing some things here. Norbert Wiener coined the term for his book, Cybernetics, control and communication in the animal and machine. And by animal, he means everything to do with living systems, including the social, human beings, and so on. And machine is very general too, so it's very general. The term grew out of some conferences on feedback and circular causality in biological and social systems. That was the title, although there were mathematicians and engineers and other scientists at these conferences. The beginning emphasis was on biological and social systems. I think it's important to appreciate that. And as I will say in a moment, some of the people who were present at those meetings and founded cybernetics were already critical in their thinking, as I understand it. I like this definition from Louis Coufinal from 1956. Cybernetics is the art of assuring l'efficacité de l'action. So it's also an art. You practice it. It's something you do every moment in your life. You are trying to understand, control, manage, survive within a complex world. So understanding some cybernetics can help you do this. It's very good. Then from Stafford Beer, who is known as the father of management cybernetics, Here the definition is the science of effective organization. And he has written many books about how to manage business institutions, how to manage states, economies, countries, and so on. You may have heard of him because he worked with Allende, President Allende in Chile, to create a computer network to help support the Chilean government and the Chilean economy. If you don't know about that, I'm sure you really should find out more, because he was such a pioneer in all he did. He also, in his later years, when he talked about cybernetics, would say it's about being holistic. You look, it's about trying to understand everything, trying to look at everything. It's an impossible task, but you must be open to all things. And I've just been reading a little book of his. I don't know if you can see this here. I'll give the reference at the end. It's a little book called Designing Freedom. And it's showing how basic principles of cybernetics apply when one wishes to design states, institutions which support freedom and democracy. It's very wonderful work. My own view is that cybernetics is a transdiscipline and that it brings together many other disciplines in a comprehensive, understandable way. So be open. You may be a social scientist, but be open to understand the biological, understand something about the basic laws of physics and so on, and see things in a unified way, trying to understand how all these disciplines work together to give us human beings some understanding of how the world works. There's also a meta-discipline, that because it's about human observers and how they interact with each other, how they work with each other to address complex issues, it's a meta-discipline. That means it comments on other disciplines. It tries to understand how they work, what their assumptions are, and indeed to be critical. Okay, so for example, it's a standard trope, standard message within cybernetics to say that the physicists who think they can create a theory of everything are deluded. It is just not possible, because we are human beings, part of an unknowable whole. That's just a taste of that. And then I wish to mention Heinz von Förster, who made, in 1974, he made the distinction between the first order study of observed systems, first order cybernetics, and the second order study of observing systems, second order cybernetics. This was very helpful for people to conceptualize what cybernetics can do, what it does. The distinction was imminent. There were many already working in the social sciences who were aware of the problems in the social sciences. But this distinction helped to clarify what cybernetics is about as a whole. And in particular, in the second order study, it's the emphasis on human beings as human observers. So the discipline then becomes explicitly reflexive. It's about humans understanding humans. So it becomes part of it, encompasses the social sciences, which is what my little book was about. And I'll move on. I call these foundations as sort of basic assumptions that at least I have about cybernetics and its relevance. Everything that is said by or to an observer. This is a combination of quotes from Umberto Maturana and Heinz von Förster. This is puts everything down to human actors. There are no external authorities. There are no holy God-given texts that we look to. And there's no other superior authority. At the end of the day, it's down to us. We may choose in our beliefs to believe there are such things as divinely revealed texts, but that's a personal choice. It's not a rule for anybody. We are who we are. So cybernetics is already very much from the beginning about the freedom of the individual and the responsibility of the individual. Cybernetics is, in my view, is a science, particularly first order cybernetics. It's very clear, very logical, very scientific. It takes the assumption that systems are state determined. There are no miracles as such in this world of state determined systems. Whatever happens is a function of what the inputs are, the the state of the system at that particular time, and then the outputs. And then, as mathematical functions can show, the internal state of the system will change, and there'll be further inputs. And there's a logic of this. It's known as the theory of automaton theory, or indeed it's the theory of computation. Turing machines are an example of such systems. This gives a sort of tight logic to the arguments that cyberneticians make about complex systems. And the person who you need to look to understand this formal approach in cybernetics is Ross Ashby, who is famous for his law of requisite variety, the law of requisite variety. Only variety can destroy or control or manage variety. So if we're faced with a complex system, we have to learn, we have to acquire enough knowledge about that system if we wish to manage it or survive within it. And one of my favorite examples of this law is that if you are a hunter, hunting an animal, you're out there, you're a primitive hunter, if you like, with your bow and arrow, and you wish to capture something, you must have more variety in your states, in your behavior, than the creature that you're hunting. If not, you will become the hunted. Okay, the prey becomes the predator. So these are just basic rules of how we try to control. These are the limits on what we can do, but also they tell us that we must, where necessary, amplify our intelligence, amplify our variety to us understand the world about us. And it's a point that Ross Ashby makes very, very clearly in his work, that if we as living systems do not become properly informed of the constraints that we live under, if you like, the laws of nature, then we are doomed. And we are now desperately, late in the day, trying to understand how the natural world works in terms of the terrible things we're doing to climate, in terms of climate change and the damage we're doing to the biosphere. So those are lawful behaviors which we're trying to understand, but also we're trying to understand how to manage, control, influence the behavior of the social systems, which are full of all kinds of horrors, wars, exploitation, and so on. And as I see it, the only way we can tackle the important global problems of the biosphere is if we work also to try to solve the problems of human conflict, human division, and lack of justice in the human condition. Okay, now the next foundation I've got there is there are undecidable questions. This is from Heinz von Förster again. He's pointing out, he's trying to point out to us that there are some questions which we human beings cannot answer definitively. The tools of science do not apply. And these are questions like, one of his favorites is, what happened before the Big Bang? If we accept the scientist story of the Big Bang, no one knows what happened before it. No one knows what happens after the end of the world. There are myths about this, all sorts of stories, but these are myths. And if we wish to buy into some of these myths, it's our personal choice. He says our great freedom is how we choose to answer undecidable questions. So for example, another example is there a God? It's a personal choice if you wish to believe there is a God, or we should choose not to. These are the important personal undecidable questions that we choose to answer or not. We may obviously remain also agnostic. Another one is, what happens after death? Is there life after death? Is there something after death? Another undecidable question. And these are questions which are beyond our understanding. If you read St. Paul, or if you read Heinz von Förster, you appreciate these are questions that we answer personally. This is our, Heinz says, is our one fundamental freedom, is our choice in how we answer these questions. We should also respect, because these are undecidable questions, we should respect how other people choose to answer them too. It's their right to answer them in their own particular way. And a little summing up of this view of the human condition, it's a quotation from Gordon Pass, my mentor, my teacher. Life is ineffable. You cannot tell the one final story of it. And also it's ineluctable. You cannot unlock it. You cannot get outside of life to look at it. We are in it. We are locked inside it, whether we like it or not. I just want to return before I move on to the next slide, where I say systems are state determined in the view of first order cybernetics. I say there's no miracles, only tales of power. What I want to say is not that I'm denying that miraculous things don't happen, or that there aren't wonderful, strange things that we experience in our lives. It's just that they are not part of a scientific narrative. They are personal experiences. And when someone tells us that they've had a very particularly striking personal experience, they've had a moment of enlightenment, cosmic consciousness, or they've witnessed some miraculous healing, they're tales of power. They're tales. This is the term used by Carlos Castaneda in his stories about Don Juan. Or Don Juan uses this term, tales of power. We can tell each other these tales, and we can be persuaded that there's some reality to them or not. Again, these are our choices, but they lie outside the scientific method, the scientific apparatus of deciding things. But I could share some very interesting personal experiences with you, which lie outside the scientific canon. I'm sure we all could. So I'm not denying they do not exist. Foundations to, I think by now the whole world is beginning, all the worlds who have access to basic education and communication systems are beginning to understand that the biosphere, that's the sphere in which all life exists on the surface of this planet, is a circular system. It's open to matter and energy, energy from the sun, small amount of energy from the stars. So matter, which is the Earth's crust, which is recycled through the various chemicals and elements that make up life and support all life. And there's open to matter a little bit because occasionally we get comets, meteors coming into the biosphere, but otherwise it's a closed system. And we are affecting how that system works by our human behavior. Okay, so that's the biosphere. And within the biosphere, we can distinguish distinct ecosystems, but in reality, everything is connected to everything else. If you like, the biosphere is just one big ecosystem. Okay, so now living systems, that's what we are, examples of. Living systems are pockets of increasing order within a world of increasing disorder. This is basic physics, the second law of thermodynamics, that disorder in the universe is increasing. The story goes, and this is just it's the theory, it's the story that the scientists have come up with. There was a big bang, all the energy came out, and it continues to be dissipated throughout what we call the universe. And one day, trillions of years in the future, all that energy will finally be dissipated, and we'll have what some people refer to as the heat death. Everything will stop. Then who knows? But the point is that whilst all this energy is dissipating, like a stream rushing down a hill, there are little pockets of order which are being produced, self-organizing systems. These are, in a river, you see eddies, whirlpools, all kinds of structures emerge. And we are examples of that. We're very highly sophisticated structures that have evolved along with other living systems. And this is all evidenced by beautiful science, if you wish to look into it. Now, living systems, therefore, are these pockets of increasing order, or the physicists would call it negative entropy or negentropy. It doesn't matter. It's order. Self-organizing systems, we become more ordered. Now, another key point here is that these systems, living systems, are organizationally closed. What that means is that they are systems that are continually reproducing themselves, complex systems. In the words of the Chilean biologist Humberto Maturana, living systems are autopoietic. They are self-creating. They have a circular organization where they produce the elements that constitute the system itself. If that organization is broken, we die. The system is dead. So autopoietic systems. And they're closed because that process is a closed loop. If you break into that loop, you break the organization. The system is dead. But another point about that is that no one can put information or order into the system itself directly. So no one can program you. They can try to through indoctrination and through telling you things are the case, but it's always up to you. You're free. You are the one who is making sense of these messages. You are the one who's creating the information within you. Okay, so you're closed to this information outside unless you choose to be open to it in a conversation with other human beings, which is a part of a bigger story. Now, all of us in that biological sense inhabit, Matrana says, structurally coupled to, we're connected to our own environmental niches. So we all live in the natural world. We are part of the natural world. We're constituted out of the natural world. And when we die, our bodies return to being part of the natural world. And so I say these are things which I think all humans now around the world are beginning to understand more and more clearly what is the human condition. The other thing to appreciate is that because we are organization and closed systems trying to make sense of this wonderful but mysterious world around us, the realities which we experience are what are being computed by our brains and our bodies. This is our experience. What we think is out there is something that we have constructed, a reality we are living in. There is obviously something out there because we keep encountering stuff, but when we encounter stuff, we just add to or augment our constructions, our realities. And in terms of our shared reality, who we are, what we think we are, and what we should do, all that, it's the concept. Einstein first about reality in this sense is the consensus of a community. We use clocks and timetables and maps and rules and all sorts of things to bring coherence to our worlds. Okay, human beings in this sense are so far different from any other species that we are aware of, and that we have these clocks, we have these calendars, we have these institutions. So human observers, that's us, we're part of a species that co-constructs, we together construct our social institutions. By that, I just mean our cultures, our societies, the regular way in which we do things and the regular ways in which we share knowledge, understanding with each other, including hopefully some wisdom. So going back to the beginning of the idea of being critical, I like to talk about this because I was part of the baby boomer birth expansion generation after the Second World War. And it's my experience that that generation, my generation, was we were very critical in the general sense of we questioned everything, and we put many things to the test, and we started to make decisions for ourselves. Often these were just mainly to do with our personal lives. For example, many of us stopped just being conformists in terms of going to church every Sunday, being part of the Church of England or the Methodist Church, because at the time, probably as many as 70 to 90% of the population in England went to church every Sunday. That's what we did. I went to Sunday school when I was a small child. That's where I learned about Christianity. It's where I learned to love Jesus, which I still do. But we questioned everything. And we started to question the social institutions around us, including marriage, for example. This is when we had the first beginnings of, non-marriage institutions, just people partnering together and living together, feeling free that they should do that. And we also, thanks to the pill, had a period of intense personal promise of what really was promiscuous behavior amongst young people, freedom to engage in sexual relations with whomever you liked without worrying about consequences. Now, that was quickly squashed because of the prevalence of emotional damage, unwanted pregnancies, infections, diseases. HIV, other sexually transmitted diseases. So it turned out not to be such a good idea. It turns out there's some sense behind the traditional mores of saying, be careful, or do not be promiscuous, put it that way around. Okay, but we also, if we're being critical, we should have freedom to interact with other social actors. When I grew up, I would go out and play with my friends in the street, but there were some of my school friends were not allowed out to play with us. Their parents, usually middle class, kept them inside the house, inside the garden. They kept them separate from their peers, and it was I found this very troublesome. Why couldn't I play with my friends after school? Why were they being kept in and being made to do their homework and so on? But it's just a microcosm of the larger story of what happens when people cease to interact with each other. We obviously have different communities who do not interact and choose not to interact. We also have mechanisms in the society which separate us. Some people just get richer and richer and richer and richer and richer. Other people get poor or stay poor or only get slightly richer, but they live in different worlds. They follow different mores, different habits. They understand the world in very different ways. So this is vital that we are free. We give ourselves the freedom to interact with other people. And also, this is freedom of speech, speak one's mind. When I grew up as a teenager in this birth boom generation, we discussed everything. We were open about our thoughts and our ideas. It shocked the grown-ups, our parents, our teachers, and so on. Sometimes what we said, but we were speaking our mind. But one thing that I think all of us, all my friends certainly took from our Christian background, was that we should not harm others. Okay, we should act in the world to help the world become what we think it ought to be, act towards the futures that we desire, as Heinz von Förster would phrase it, but do no harm, which is a basic part of the vows, if you like, that are taken by medical doctors. First, do no harm. Have I gone too far? Let me just go back. That's right. Not letting me go back. Okay, so that's the idea of being critical, but with cybernetics, we have much more formal ways of understanding what it is to be critical, how to criticize, how to look intelligently at the world around us and understand it. And these are some examples of critical cyberneticians, and mentioned in my book too, if you've been looking at my book. But there's a lot of information online. I'm a great supporter of Wikipedia. I think it's a wonderful institution for bringing knowledge and understanding to people around the world. I use it all the time myself. It's a useful shorthand. If you're trying to be holistic, trying to understand so much of the world and how it works, then it's a quick entry into many topics. So these are some of them which I'm, who are my heroes, if you like. Norbert Wiener and Warren McCullough, known as perhaps the grandfathers of cybernetics. Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist. Margaret Mead, anthropologist. Heinz von Förster. Stafford Beer, I've mentioned. Gordon Pass, my mentor, who developed a cybernetic theory of conversations, which is the basis for a whole understanding of the psychosocial. I call it the psychosocial unit is social systems and cultures. And then we've come back to Maturana, the great, wonderful Humberto who died just last year, who, having developed his biologist understanding and insights about how the nervous system works and how life works, how living systems works, he used that as the basis for developing his biology. He called it in his later years, called it the biology of love. This is critical cybernetics at its very best. It really does point out, helps us understand what is the human condition and the extent to which we are part of each other's worlds. One thing that Heinz quotes a couple of times and I've found it also at other places, is that although in English we have two words, one is conscious, to be conscious, to be aware in that sense, loose sense. We also have conscience, that we have something inside us which warns us if we are doing something wrong. Now, I know in French there's only one word, and perhaps is this the case in Spanish? Do you have two words, one for conscious and one for conscience? One word or two? Juancho?
I think
I cannot hear. Okay, well,
it's because if I speak with the speaker, then we make the echo. So
it's not so bad. It's not so bad. I just wish to know: do you have two words? One for conscious,
conciencia, y
and one for conscience.
Uf.
Okay, well,
it's the same one, Bernard.
Thank you.
It is the
same in French.
Yes,
also.
it is the same.
Yeah, but in English we have the two words, and one is about the general state of knowing with oneself, knowing with others, to be conscious in that way, to know together. And the other one is spelled differently, conscience, it's conscience, and that is to do with your sense of doing right or wrong. So we have these two words. But Heinz points out that these two words come from the same Latin root. That's why in French and Spanish you only have the one word. But the point that is made here is that is this conscious or consciousness, is that inside us there is an awareness as human beings that we are part of a social world, we're part of humanity, that the other is, we are one with the other in some sense, that we are all socially produced as personalities, as persons, as selves. So we are social selves within a social world. And somewhere in the English understanding of the word conscience is that if you, it stops you, or if you are sensitive to your conscience, you do not harm other people. I went on a bit there. So anyway, my general thesis there is that a cybernetician, properly understood, someone who tries to understand the world as a whole and his or her place within it, cannot not be critical. And this is some of cybernetic wisdom. I refer to it as Heinz von Förster. A is better off and B is better off. If we are one social world, then I will be better off if you are better off. And it behooves me to help you become better off. And of course, vice versa. But we should be helping be the other person to have a better life. And then we all benefit. And another fundamental thing from Heinz is act always to maximize one's choices. This is keeping your options open. This is looking for the variety in life. It's a corollary of the law of requisite variety, actually. So keep your options open. And this is Gordon Pask. A fundamental human freedom, or one fundamental human freedom, is the right of actors to interact. If you look around the world and see places where people are not allowed to interact, obviously, sometimes you need to have rules to protect the innocent, to protect the young. But in other cases, why are people prevented from interacting? Think of cultures where males and females are separated, where you have separate schools for males and females, where you have hard rules about what, yes, different rule systems for males and females. I mean, obviously, this is a big topic. I just mentioned in passing, really. And then this is real cybernetic wisdom, because cybernetics is about communication. And from the early beginnings, cyberneticians were aware of the problems with language, the limits of language, or languaging. I'm talking words. I hope you understand some of them, but it's a very crude tool. I need it really. I like to have gadgets. I like to have diagrams. I like to be able to ask you questions. I need to converse with you to properly understand if you understand me. So this is from Ludwig Wittgenstein, who in his thinking as a philosopher about philosophy, he criticizes other philosophers basically as fighting over pseudo questions. He really is a kind of prescient cybernetician in this sense. Philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language. Okay, so language is bewitching. We're led down all kinds of straight paths. I have some particular tropes. I don't like that word. Why do I use it? I have some particular favorite criticisms. One is the word religion is not well defined. It's just a word that's thrown around. The word race is not scientific. It's just thrown around. The distinction between black and white is just such a crude tool. You know, our language is unrefined. It's crude, and it creates division where it ought to be creating unity. And the final bit of wisdom here is from Humberto Maturana. That's something he said very early on in his writing about autopoiesis. And it's worth thinking about this, make sure you understand it. A truly human society is a non-hierarchical society, no one above anybody else, except if we need to get jobs done, and then we maybe have a temporary boss who organizes it, someone, the captain of the team, if you like. But basically, we are a non-hierarchical society. We're all equals in that sense. A society in which all relations of order are constitutively transitory and circumstantial. Okay, so here he's saying they're constitutively transitory. It means they are created and then they go away again. You know, just as I said, teams are created, then they go away. There's nothing fixed in that sense. And a circumstantial, we need these orders to the creation of relations that continuously negate the institutionalization of human abuse. So if we're going to work as teams and have leaders and to do things, to be a political party, if you wish, then the whole point of our existence is to make sure that we're continuously negating any institutionalization of human abuse. So wherever there's human abuse through the laws of the land or the laws of the dictators, this is where we work together to continuously negate those abuses. It's a very elegant, I think, a very intelligent way of saying what it means to work critically within the human society, within the world. Very briefly here, because these are in the book, Laws of Ecology. I've mentioned this before. From 1972, I first encountered this. Everything is connected to everything else. Everything has to go somewhere. Nature knows best. No such thing as a free lunch. Okay, so these founding laws of ecology, and these are from Nietzsche also in the book. It's just trying to keep us humble about what we know and what we can do. There's always a bigger picture to what we're trying to do. There's always more detail in what we're trying to do. There's always another perspective from what we think is the case. There's always error. We're always making mistakes. There's always an unexpected. Something's going to happen. You know, someone pulls a plug somewhere. You know, a butterfly twitches in Outer Mongolia, and there are tornadoes in Kentucky. It's all one world in that sense, but always unexpected. Although I seem to have lost my final slide. I didn't save it. Never mind. I had two books I was going to recommend to you. I'll just speak them to you. If you make a note, it'll be in the recording. This is a little book by Stafford Beer, the father of management cybernetics. It's called Designing Freedom. Tiny little book, Designing Freedom. It's a basic introduction to the cybernetics of management. And it talks about, well, it's critical cybernetics in the book. The other book I was going to mention is called Our Own Metaphor. And it's authored by someone called Mary Catherine Bateson. You must look this up on Amazon or somewhere, or Wikipedia. She was the daughter of Gregory Bateson and Margaret Mead. She attended the conference in 1969, in which Gregory Bateson convened a collection of 14 cybernetic-related thinkers on the topic of the effects of conscious purpose on human adaptation. This is, in a way, it's the first official critical conference of critical cybernetics. And his daughter, who was present there, gives this wonderful story. She tells the account of what happened in that conference. It's not just a collection of papers. It's a story of the drama of that conference as people try to understand each other, held their conversations, got angry with each other, fell in love with each other, and so on. It's a wonderful book. It's called Our Own Metaphor, Mary Catherine Bateson. It was reprinted not long ago. So at that point, I say thank you very much. I hope some of the noises I've made in my languaging have made some sense to you. Thank you very much. I'll now stop sharing.
Thanks, Bernard.
Can you see me now?
Yes, we can see you.
Good. So, absolutely my pleasure. I don't know if I've spoken too much or too little. I suspect too much. I usually do. But I now must assume that you will continue with your seminar, your colloquium in Spanish. Is that correct?
Yes, but
I can see Juancho nodding. Okay, in which case I will say, have a wonderful time, celebrate being alive, and leave your seminar at the end joyfully, because whatever else, this is an amazing world that we live in. It's a wonderful world. Scary, but wonderful. Thank you. Bye-bye. This is me leaving.
Thank you, Bernard, for the presentation. Before you go, as the organizers and the seminar, which is hosting this talk that you gave, is going to continue with some activities. I think there might be some questions from the forum. I don't know, Juancho, just some comments and so on, because as I understood, they read carefully your book, so maybe there might be some questions connecting with your presentation. So I close my audio, Juancho, and if you want to give some...
I don't know if someone here... Oops. Now I can. I don't know if someone for the seminar wants to make a question to... Yo les cedo el micrófono. Es poquito lo que se puede jugar.
Just a quick question, Mr. Bernard Scott. We have read your book and it's been very interesting and very helpful to the build of this seminar and also for the present colloquium. But I just have a question that it was meant to be during the conference of yours. It's about, what about these unanswered questions? They should be lived like that. They should be like those questions that you mentioned about of what is afterlife, where does life come from? And those questions, are they meant to be kept like that as a philosophical unanswered? Or it should be just like something more about what the science and the knowledge of the human being can achieve for the future, and mostly like a goal to answer these questions. Do you think that is going to be possible?
I know. I think that was partly the point of the talk, is that I put it another way around. The world is just a word, but I'm using it to mean everything that is outside us, and we as a whole, the whole. I'm hypothesizing some sort of whole, and of which I am a part, and you are a part. We are all a part, and it's logically impossible for the part to understand this whole. We cannot stand outside life to see it as a whole and understand it. So we are limited in what we can know. This is where passage talks about life as being ineffable. We cannot tell the story. We can try to tell the story, which we always do in many, many different ways, that the story is, in a sense, never ending. We can never come to the final theory of everything, or the theory explanation of why everything is as it is. I believe that is indeed a universal truth. He also says it's ineluctable. You cannot get outside it, which I've already emphasized. Now, it's not saying that thinking about the origins or the end of life, what happens after death, is there a God? Is there some other supernatural, if you like, forces that work in the world, which we perhaps affect us? I'm thinking there of C.G. Jung's concept of synchronicity. He points out that many of us experience strange episodes where things seem to happen by coincidence, which is very significant. So is this really just a significance, or is there something else intruding into our reality, which we're thinking of, normally think of in some kind of simple-minded causal way, that one thing causes another, and then something very weird or strange happens. So I'm not ruling things out in any sense. And I'm fully aware, I'm now retiring from, more or less retired from academic life. So I'm being more open in public about who I am as a person. I happen to be a believing Christian. I was brought up as a Christian. I drifted away through all sorts of influences as the baby boom generation that enjoyed all those freedoms. And but in 1986, I came back. I had some personal tragedies, and I discovered that the only place where I could find solace was in my faith as a Christian. But by that stage, I had already become, in very, what I would think, intelligible ways, wise ways, become very critical of the institutions, not just Christian institutions, but all organized religious institutions, very critical of them. I think they often work in abusive ways. They do not follow the rule given by Maturana, let alone the teachings of Jesus. So I'm very happy to say that in my belief system, I've witnessed miracles, I've read about miracles, and I'm fully happy to accept that there are miracles, there are other things. I don't like the words spiritual, I don't like the words supernatural because they're not well defined, but there are things which are beyond our scientific understandings, and they do happen in the world. And it's wrong I think it's wrong to deny them. And one can experience things. There are, the altered states of consciousness is one example of where one can know these truths in a different kind of way, not the scientific way of evidence and logic, but the personal way of personal revelation. There can be moments of, there's a book entitled, some people call it cosmic consciousness, some people call it enlightenment, but there are moments when you can experience the ineffable and you can know these things are true. As St. Paul says, those are Jesus' words. Now I see my scholarship is getting rusty as I get older. The Holy Spirit will lead you into all truth. This is truth as personal revelation. And I thank God that I've experienced some of these eternal truths in my own private life, but I cannot, all I can do is witness to them. I cannot prove to someone else that my beliefs are true and theirs are wrong. All I can do is bear witness to the ends of the earth, witness to the glory of God. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you. ¿Alguien más? Aprovechen la oportunidad. We have shy students very much, but hopefully David Karminski that is here And as you know him well, maybe it will be a little bit less shy. He's here.
Okay. Hi, Bernard. A long time
Hello.
no seeing you. Since Colombia, the last time that we saw you.
Who are you?
Isaac Contraluz.
Okay. David Karminski. Let me see if we can.
David.
Yeah, let me change.
Hello. Hello.
Okay. Finally. Hi, Bernard. Thank you very
I
much
like-
for your
like your-
conference.
Let me say, I like your hat.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. You know, I'm always buying new hats. So
Me too.
so hi Bernard, thank you very much for the conference. Actually, the book it was amazing. It's an amazing way to introduce ourselves into socio-cybernetic. I really like the chapter about the ethics of socio-cybernetic, and I want to know a little bit more about how you establish all these ethical rules. You already talk about them, right? But how you achieve this idea when normally in systems theory, we only describe things. We don't believe that we are like critical thinkers or that we are actively, trying or morally to transform society. So do you think that through these ethics, we can bound different aspects, not only of sociology, but from other disciplines?
Well, I don't think this question of ethics, I don't think it's to do with disciplines. It's to do with one's personal life. If there's one thing that struck me powerfully about cybernetics, or if you like, second order cybernetics, is that it places the responsibility for being alive on the human observer. So there's a certain point in my life where what I was studying, this abstract discipline, cybernetics, which I was using for my experiments on human learning and educational processes, that was my job. There's a certain moment when I realized that it was also telling me, and mainly I got this through Pascal conversation theory, that I'm the one who's making all these ideas up and using these ideas. And it's my world suddenly became one world, in which my private life, in which I was making decisions, and my professional life, in which I was studying sciences and carrying out experiments, in a sense became one. I could see that I had made certain choices to be that kind of scientist. And I could see in my private life, I'd made certain choices about how I would live my life, what freedoms I gave myself, what rules I followed, and so on. And it suddenly became all one. And it was a remarkable moment, because I can remember going to a seminar, a smaller one than one you're having here, but a small seminar of half a dozen people. And I could see that apart from Gordon Pass, Dionysius Kalikoudis, and myself, we were the three cyberneticians who had just been discovering conversation theory. Dionysius and I had been learning about it from Pass. We were the three cyberneticians in the room, and we could see how the other people in the room were ruled by their belief systems. They were, they had one particular philosophical view or one particular scientific theory they believed in or they followed. And you could see that they were, in a sense, trapped inside their own thinking. There wasn't this level of awareness which brings you out of your own thinking and says, these are my thoughts. This is my thinking. I'm the one who's created this. I'm the one who is choosing to believe it. So it really opened me up to another level of awareness. I mean, there's huge literature about levels of consciousness, levels of awareness, and so on. But this was a personal experience of insight or opening up of my understanding, my awareness. So that's where the ethics become really personal, because you are the one in the situation. You are the one deciding how to act. Now, I would say that there's put it another way around, we can choose our beliefs and we can use them to guide us. So John Lilly, famous sort of proto-cybernetician, who was a biologist who studied dolphins. He did a lot of work on using LSD in isolation tanks, and he played around with his own mind that way. He talked about programming and meta-programming in the human biocomputer. What he meant by that is that you can set your beliefs as meta-programs which monitor your own thinking and behavior, which is what we do. Freud called it the superego. We internalize the rules of the society of our mothers and fathers, and these rule our life. And part of psychoanalytic work is helping us become aware that we have been conditioned or programmed in this way. So we can, insofar as we become enlightened, to say, I have been programmed, by my environment. I've been following all these rules which come from outside. Let me decide for myself if I follow them or not. Then we can choose to program ourselves. We can monitor ourselves. We can keep additional. Cognition is a very complex process. It's not just a simple line of thinking. We have metacognition, thinking about thinking, but all the time. As I'm speaking or as I'm listening to someone, part of me monitors their grammar, their vocabulary. I'm monitoring things inside how they speak, not just the message they're sending. I'm looking at how they dress, how they behave. All these things are aspects of trying to understand the other. So I can keep some of this monitoring to myself and help me guide me what to do in a particular situation. So I do have a number of beliefs, propositions that I keep on hold. So, for example, we already had from von Förster, A is better off and B is better off, or act to maximize the alternatives. You can work to keep these kind of understandings alive in your thinking as metacognition, keeping you aware of what you're doing. And one of my favorites is from Confucius. He says, the scholar, the virtuous person is always on the side of the lowly. Okay? So you have to monitor yourself and think, no, I must not at this moment go to this person because he's rich and powerful. I must think of, it's so similar to Christianity. Walk into the room, do not seek the higher seat. Look to see who's in the lower seat. Go into a room, like in your seminar, look around the room and say, who is the outsider? Who is the person who needs a friend? And you actively seek out the friend. This is how RC51 sociocybernetics works to a large extent. There's a family awareness of wishing to be inclusive, to engage. For me, it's a great pleasure. I love conversation. So if there's a new person in the group, or when I was in the group regularly, I'd look to get to know that person. It would be a great pleasure. And too often there was not time to get to know everybody, but usually we worked up this kind of ethos from my ethics, the ethos of being inclusive and having fellowship together, being human together. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Vern. It's always helpful. And I really think that it's more helpful now than ever that socially and politically, the whole world is like trying to change things in many different levels, and suddenly the story is rewriting, and we are seeing new ways to see different societal groups that have been oppressed through many years, right? So seeing a science that actually, even without losing the scientific regimen, incorporate these kind of elements, right? It's really, really, really important for us right now, and more for us, the situation of Latin America.
I'm so glad you think so, because for me, as I said, the significance of cybernetic thinking the science that is reflexive is so powerful. And I think insofar as it's about communication and trying to control or understand the world, it's a cybernetic invention. So cybernetics itself is good cybernetics. So the awareness of the significance needs to really go up. And the problem is people are still locked into we have the whatever. The word cybernetics still conjures up strange connotations to do with machinery and control engineering and so on. And some cyberneticians have wondered what else can we call it. So I'm very happy with social cybernetics or socio-cybernetics as a quick way to get into the idea that we can have these scientific understandings and wise understandings of the human condition. As I say, I'm retired now, more or less, but one of my friends, fellow academic, has persuaded me to write one more paper, which he's given me, I think, I have 11 months now to write a short paper. And I said, okay, it gives me time to do some more reading because I don't like to hurry things. I wish, now I'm retired, I wish to luxuriate in reading and thinking and talking. So I've already planned this paper, and instead of working to a deadline, I have a long time to go. But it's called Second Order Cybernetics and the End of Philosophy. What I want to say is that philosophy, in the traditional sense, it's very interesting, but it's of historical interest only. Okay, you will not find anything in there that isn't to be found within second order cybernetics or to be understood from a cybernetic perspective. And this is why I include Wittgenstein, because much of his philosophy is about philosophy. It's a critical philosophy. So there are many you can find in philosophy many people who are critical of philosophy itself, and much of that is good. So it doesn't rule everything out, but it's largely saying all that stuff, throw it away. And the same can go for much social science as well. And the same can go for much theoretical physics, which has become incredibly speculative. You know, they construct all sorts of theories nowadays, some physicists do anyway, which are not testable. That's not science. So again, it's critical thinking, which says, hello, someone is making a claim about empirical truths. Is this testable? No, they're just waffing. So yes, please be critical, but you can be critical in a simple, direct way as a cybernetician. Everything that comes in front of you should be questioned through these cybernetic spectacles. The second order awareness of cybernetics allows you to question everything and anything and keeps you human at the same time. I hope.
Thank you very much, Bernard. I give the microphone back to Juancho.
Pleasure.
Hello, Bernard.
Hello, Juancho.
See, seems that his name is Andres. Hopefully you meet him.
Hi. Hello, Andreas.
Hi, Bernard. I'm sorry if my English is not very good, but I have one question. I really like, as David said, the book about what is social, about a social network. And besides of this kind of thinking and what you would say about the awareness of, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I really, you're...
Slow down.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let me compliment you on your very smart, very nice fashion you have there. These are good signals you're giving off. Some of the people around you are a bit scruffy, you know.
No. They're
like me, Bohemians, but
oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Ladies, look at this man. He's beautiful.
If you wait, you will see another beautiful people like Welche and David as Aftercell and maybe and Juancho, and this group is very focused on your book, and obviously we can appreciate that. And I think it's an amazing book. In fact, the part that I most like is what is social about a social network, because as you said, we have to awake this kind of consciousness for the very people and from themselves, and how can, my question goes to how can we aware or break or maybe motivate other peoples to encourage this kind of thinking and break the mold, for instance, to become a more critical thinkings of the world, in the world.
Okay, well, I'm aware that mainly in my life, I've been treading the academic path, going to conferences, writing papers, and finally writing this little book. And I can only hope to touch a very small number of people with my work. I'm not gifted to be a politician. I'm not gifted to have a blog. And the idea of being on Twitter makes me go, whoa, and so on. So, but there are communication tools. And I said to myself many years ago, as the internet came into being, I witnessed that, I was there when it was all beginning. And my mentor, Gordon Pasquez, he had foreseen the internet before it was created. He really was, a visionary in a sense, prescient about what was happening. And I used to say, well, we're going to have these tubes, these wires, but the question is, what goes down these tubes? So we need messages, if you like, which are positive, scientific, clearly based, and inclusive, not divisive. So there's a whole need in the world to bring forward the positive messages and the positive understandings, to get away from simple sound bites and so on. So this is for the future, and I if I knew what to do, I would try to do it. At the moment, I'm semi-retired. I'm returning to my other love, which is making music. And I many years ago, when I was younger and I had so much energy, I was writing songs and performing, but my scientific life and my duties as a parent, my family life took over. And so my music has always been in the background, but now it's more prominent. And maybe at my age, I'll become the next Bob Dylan and send messages. I'm trying to be funny. I will send messages of protest all around the world, which will wake people up. Because this is one of the things I mentioned, the influences as in the post-war generation, my generation. Bob Dylan really did play a significant role in raising awareness of his generation, my generation. So that was a musician. So I don't know what to do, but there are media out there, and there is, I call it the emerging global conversation. Bit by bit, is becoming more possible for us to interact with each other, and we must be in there, as it were, fighting the fight for the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I have one friend who's now devoting himself to combating, the false truths and so on. So there's much to be done. I can't, but it begins in your person, get your ideas straight, and it begins with your immediate circle of friends and family. And it's conversation, and it may take, with some people, it may take years before they see the light, as it were, and they may never see the light. It's trying to persuade someone about, a particular political point of view, or trying to get them to be critical about organized religion, which I regularly do. If I get into conversation with someone, I gently perhaps touch on that topic. I'm particularly concerned about the constraints that organized religions place on people. So that's my personal crusade I do in little ways, but I've not yet tried to do it in bigger ways. Maybe I'll write a poem about it. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a dance. I don't know. So it's the global conversation, or the emerging global conversation, in which the right messages need to be conveyed. Okay. And also it's an educational process. We must educate each other. Listen on them. Okay. Thank you. What was your name again?
Andres.
Andres.
Thank you very much.
My brain is getting old.
Thank you very much.
As you may know from studies of people, I don't think I'm imminently have Alzheimer's disease. I don't think so. I did have a scare a few years ago when I had a stroke, but that's another story. I don't think I've got Alzheimer's disease, but you may know if you've seen any programs about Alzheimer's that people with dementia, Alzheimer's, enjoy music. They can often remember songs, they can play their instruments, even though in the other aspects of their lives, they don't know who they are or what they're doing. So I'm going to work on the music.
No, thank you very much. Now we pass the microphone to another question, or we back to Aaron? Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, if it's not a lot of bother, I would like to steal your time for another question. This is mostly about of the future. We are living now in a world that is constantly changing, and we are on this starting a new revolution of bioinformation, biotechnology, and data technology. So what I'm asking is, because we can see a glimpse of what you think theoretically for the future, but I would like to know two things. What do you think is going to happen, is most likely to happen for the next, let's say, 15 years? And what do you wish in an utopic form to happen for the whole society and the participation of us as researchers of sociocybernetics?
Okay, well, there's just a couple of small questions. Thank you. Totally. What is your name again?
Aaron Sid.
Sorry?
Aaron?
Aaron.
Aaron, yes.
Aaron. Okay, Aaron. If you're to wear a tie, you should wear it fastened up.
Yeah. The thing is that I get a little bit fat, so it no longer closes.
Well, throw the tie away. It's a nice tie. It's a nice tie.
Thank you very much.
Okay. No, you said the world is changing. Well, is it?
Well,
most likely, but not as.
The question there is whose world? There is a sense which everyone's world is changing all the time because we grow older and we experience new things. There's also truth in it. You know, it's an old French proverb. Plus ça change, toujours la même chose. More the change there is, the more it stays the same. So there are these universals, truths about what it means to be alive. So some things are, in a sense, not changing, or if you like, if we're not careful, we lose sight of the things which are not changing, the important things. But I've already made that message. You also talked about, the technology, we this, we that. The problem with the developments of the new ways of doing things, the new technologies, artificial intelligence, and so on, is that there isn't a we. We've got separate groups with separate vested interests doing things in different ways. At the moment, there's about to be a conference about the use of artificial intelligence to create weapons, which of course already goes on. Every airplane, every vehicle, every weapon is already embedded, has already got technology embedded within it. But they're talking about now about should the use of autonomous robots be forbidden in war and so on. So there are different points of view, different perspectives here. And with respect to weapons of war, for example, you could do better than listen to the song Masters of War by Bob Dylan. Have you ever heard it?
Yes.
Oh, good. Becoming Masters of War, you build a big, that is just so wrong. War is, as Benny Wiseman, war is just pathology. So people are mad. People are psychotic. They're locked in these mad conceptions of what life is about. They think it's about ruling other people, dominating the world. We're so far away from a community of human beings, if you like. We have robots. Human beings have been programmed to think in various ways. So the big job is unpacking or changing the points of view, and that is social cybernetics. This is our area of expertise, and I don't quite know how we do it, but it's a race. I don't know if I've quoted it in the book, but I've quoted before. Do you remember H.G. Wells? Do you know H.G. Wells, the English writer? He wrote, yes. Wrote science fiction. He also wrote critical texts about the state of the world and the state of the UK in particular. But he also wrote a lovely book, History of the World. Still worth reading. He was a global thinker. He wrote a history of the world in the 1930s. And one of the things he said was, he talked about the coming of the world brain or the world mind. And at the time he was aware that there was, because of electronics and photography and things, and can't remember the names of the technology of the days, but the ways of capturing and storing vast amounts of data and in archives. And he saw this as a global opportunity to capture all human knowledge in some form. So he was really anticipating what has now become the internet. So he calls it the global brain. And he saw this as a way for the whole world to become educated, to access knowledge. And he said, it's a race. This is just before the Second World War. And he said, it's a race between education and catastrophe. So we know we have scientists working towards, again, working with respect to global catastrophes of climate change and so on, and pandemics. Not that we shouldn't pay attention to those things too, but it's working with people who need education in the best sense. As you know, as I pointed out, education is from educo, from the Latin. You have this in Spanish. I don't know how you say it in Spanish. Educo, education, educara.
Educación.
Educación, bueno, educación, varias formas de decirlo.
To educate, same word. It means to lead out.
Yes.
Educar.
So it's a shorthand way of saying to lead out from the darkness to the light. So in the best sense, to educate someone is to enlighten them. So they come into the light. And I call this cybernetic enlightenment, because this is our age. It's the age of cybernetics. Cybernetic enlightenment. This is what we are wishing to promote. And it's very good because it's not just a theory or some particular facts or some particular ideas about particular problems. It's one global idea. Let us all become cybernetically enlightened. This is the work of social cybernetics. And one of the major jobs is to enlighten other sociologists, because they're all locked in their specialism. They're all writing these books. Who reads the books? I grew up as an experimental psychologist. If you published a paper with an experiment with data and a short, hypothesis and some results. It was frowned on. To write anything speculative or conceptual, but the world has changed since then in psychology. And we now have consciousness studies and cognitive science, which is full of philosophy and so on. And we already had that in the humanities and the social sciences, people writing books, another book about bioscience, semiotics or something, I don't know. But so much of it is not worth reading. It's just a waste of time for the people writing those books and the people reading those books. This is cybernetic enlightenment. You can pick up a book and think, this is enlightening. Or you can pick up another book and think, well, it's rubbish. Because it's missing basic things, like the basics of second order cybernetic epistemology, what it is to know, what it is to live in the world, and so on. So we can, as social cybernetics, work with the education, the enlightenment, and it's something that it's a gift to all the world. And it begins, as I say, with oneself in particular spaces, and there are those who can get it beyond. But if you ask me what's going to happen, I became aware of the global climate problems, biosphere problems, pollution and so on, probably in the late 60s, something like 60s. Well, when I was at university, probably most clearly in the late 60s. And I remember in about 1972, the singer, Neil Young, in an interview, he made a prediction. He said, just as now we have people in the streets demonstrating against the Vietnam War, in a few years' time, we'll have people in the streets demonstrating about what's being done to the environment. I mean, some of these singers are clever people, they're wise people. And that was 1972. And I used to say to myself, I went to a big systems conference in the year 2000 in Toronto. Virtually every systems or cybernetic related society on the planet was at this conference. And the dominant topic was climate change, damage to the biosphere, and so on and so on and so forth. This is where you heard the terms, tipping point and feedbacks and all this being used all the time in these conferences. That was 21 years ago. And I remember saying to myself, eventually there'll be a big disaster and the rest of the world will wake up. And in how many years ago now? I can't remember, 10 years ago now, we lost New Orleans to a massive flood. And I thought, this will change the way people think. And it didn't happen. And since then, there have been more and more and more disasters. It's only now in the last few years that these disasters are becoming so big that everyone is waking up. But there's still deniers. There's still people who are reluctant to change their ways of behaving. We're doing nothing serious about it. There are people going into space. Why? Why are they spending billions of dollars going into space? I mean, apart from all the energy and all the matter that they're destroying or creating or whatever, doing all the pollution they're causing, they're just wasting time, wasting resources. And so I also am a big fan of Greta Thunberg. I hope Greta Thunberg, she is an example of what may happen. It was unexpected that a 16-year-old girl would help wake up the world, but she did it. That's the butterfly in Outer Mongolia changing the world. So in my own case, I said I was waiting for the big disaster to wake people up. And now they're coming one after the other. Extreme floods, tornadoes currently in the United States, taking everyone's attention. But there are things happening all around the world all the time. It's happening now. We are here now. And all I can see is it's getting worse. And we need to do much more. We need to do much more. We need to tell each other we need to start doing much more. But I still have a motor car, but I'm aware that, you know, one international flight by an aeroplane is equivalent to my driving my car for 2 years. You know, that's, we should ban or you know, we should cease international flights. You know, that's one example. I mean, things need to be done fast, and they need to be done on a very, very large scale. We're sort of becoming aware of that. There's much to be done. But the other side of it is still all the human disasters, the wars, the corruption. You know, there are only a few countries on the planet that claim to be, can be designated as true democracies. There's others are failed democracies, and they're full of corruption and nastiness. And then vast amounts of the world are still totalitarian, where the people either are oppressed in one way or another, and sometimes they're oppressed to the point where they have no access to education, no access to means of living. And we have at the same time these, well, we have the topic of migration. You know, here in Europe, and possibly in America, I'm not sure, North America, where people are theorizing that there is a sort of global hierarchy, the super rich, the elites, who are manipulating the world so that they wish to have all the migrants from the Middle East or from Africa come into Europe and from South America into North America and so on, because this is replacing the population. It's giving the world more workers at a cheaper rate. It's another way for the rich to continue to get richer and everyone else to be oppressed. And that's a theory. My own theory is that I think everything's out of control because the current governors don't understand what's happening in a cybernetic way in terms of, well, the influences that are going on. And it's out of control. I don't know what to do about it. I mean, the other cybernetic solution, if you had one, was if you wish to, the developed world is acting as an attractor in chaos theory terms. It's an attractor. So people from all around the world wish to come where the goodies are, where the standard of living is high. But it's been known for decades that if everyone on the planet was living at the same level of prosperity as is currently enjoyed or has been enjoyed in the developed world, we'd need 5 planets the size of Earth to provide the resources. It's impossible. So the logic, the cyber logic said, well, if you must create attractors elsewhere, you must make the places where people are leaving to be places where it's desirable to stay. And then you look, well, how do we do that? Well, you've got corrupt governments, and you've got the developed countries, to a large extent, now including China, who are in there exploiting, continuing to exploit the undeveloped parts of the world, you know, for natural resources or whatever. And eventually they'll be, well, they're already manipulating the political control. So there's, you know, to quote a phrase, there's hell on earth happening on earth around the world. And everyone wants to come to heaven, i.e. the developed world. But all that will do is turn heaven into hell as well. We'll have one global hell, which is horrible to think about. And meanwhile, the people that what I cannot understand is how the people who have the power, who have the real controls in terms of the economic levers, so-called, how they can live in such a world. Don't they understand that they are destroying themselves? In the long run, they're destroying themselves. There's no future for them or their children, the way they were working. So cybernetic enlightenment and a horror story to come before anything gets better, if it gets better. We may be left with a remnant. You know, the 7 billion or 8 billion that we now are may be reduced to 1 billion, and it may be or less, and they may be spread around in different parts of the world. Technology may be gone. We've seen these scenarios in sci-fi films and in sci-fi books. I recommend The Chrysalids by, oh dear, what was his name? I can't remember. Science fiction books are a good source of the horror scenarios of post-apocalyptic stories. Okay, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. It is very enlightening, and I am very grateful for this. And a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you. And to all of you, have a good life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Patricia, you wanted to say something before we finish the session? Wonderful session.
Yes, first to thank Bernard. Thank you for your generous share of knowledge, of reflection, and also the way you inspire us to think and rethink about what we're doing, why we're doing that, in which ways, and how we can connect in an effective way the concepts of sociocybernetics into our practical research. I think this seminar is helping a lot to give new ideas to those who are attending in presence there in CISAN, in UNAM. But also, as this will also stay in the digital memory, I think this as a message for those who are ready to take it now, and that is also very helpful. And I thank Juancho Barron for organizing this complicated format, because it's not easy to hold people there, connecting somewhere else, projecting for people to see it. But I think this is also very useful for RC51. I think we can learn from this experience. And as an advance, we're planning to have next year a conference. We don't know how, in which format, but I think it's going to be very much like this. I mean, in terms of hybrid model, we had a conference in 2020, all digital, and it went quite well. Now, let's see. We don't know what will happen. As Bernard said, things could go better in terms of pandemic aspects or not. But I think we have to continue with the reflections we're doing. And so I think we will learn a lot from this particular seminar and this format. Thank you. And that is it. Thank you, Bernard. You actually inspired me to join the RC51. So I thank you for spreading this inspiration to new generations and share with us your current work. And we invite you to keep in touch with this research group, this seminar research group that Juan Carlos is leading, and of course with RC51. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Patty. Just one final point. We've had this conversation before about the importance of RC51, the Socio-Cybernetics group, becoming more connected with other cybernetics and systems groups around the planet. I mean, that's not an easy task because it needs time and energy, but I recommend that you think about it, and perhaps the students think about becoming members of the American Society for Cybernetics, or looking into what's happening in other groups and societies who basically are pursuing a similar agenda. And I think this is a good time for people to join up, to encourage each other, to cooperate in this bigger way. I mean, RC51 has enough to do dealing with sociologists, but there's a bigger. Thank you. Okay, I stop.
Thank you very much. Gracias a todos y nos vemos a la que sigue.
Okay.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Bernard, for your wise words, and hope we meet very soon. Gracias, Patricia, por tu apoyo, y armamos ese plan de híbrido. Gracias, Esme y Sam. Perdón por...
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. I am now
Bye,
leaving.
Bernard.
Hasta luego.
Oh, go on, oh, that's it.